Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join me as we explore Southwest's lost historical characters, stunning desert vistas, forgotten Native American history, or tales of lost gold mines. There's always something new to discover. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on our latest desert adventures. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Southwest Desert, where we explore the fascinating characters who shaped the American Southwest frontier. Today, we're diving into the remarkable life of Clay Allison, a man whose legacy, while less celebrated than his contemporaries like Billy the Kid, tells an equally compelling story of justice, violence, and redemption in the Old West. The story of Clay Allison begins, as many frontier tales do, with humble origins. Born under what locals called an unlucky alignment of stars in Tennessee in 1840, Allison's life seemed marked by fate from his very first breath. As a young child, he suffered a devastating head injury that would leave him with a permanent mental disorder, a condition that would cast a long shadow over his future actions and decisions. This early trauma would prove to be just the first of many physical and mental challenges that would shape his extraordinary life. Unlike many of his gunslinging contemporaries who achieved immortality through early, violent deaths, Allison's story took a different path. He shared a fascinating parallel with Billy the Kid in that both men were deeply polarizing figures in their time, passionately loved by some and intensely hated by many more. However, where Billy the Kid's legend was cemented by his dramatic death at a young age, Allison's legacy would be shaped by a life that stretched well beyond his violent years, ultimately affecting how history would remember him. When the drums of war began beating in 1861, Allison, like countless other young Southern men, answered the Confederate call to arms. However, his military career proved remarkably brief and would foreshadow the instability that would characterize much of his later life. Within months of joining, he was discharged due to emotional instability, a decision that would set him adrift into the vast expanse of Texas, where the next chapter of his life would unfold. Thank you for joining me for another Southwest Lost Tale. If you would like to help support my channel and time, hit the Super Thanks heart icon on the bottom of the video and contribute. This is very helpful. Relax and enjoy. In the Lone Star State, Allison initially found purpose as a cowhand, working for none other than Charles Goodnight, one of the most respected cattlemen of the era. It was during this period that he began building the reputation that would follow him for the rest of his days. However, it was the legendary Johnson Waterhole incident that would first truly establish his name in frontier lore. This extraordinary confrontation perfectly encapsulates the peculiar mix of violence and civility that characterized the Old West. When a dispute arose over access to a waterhole, Allison and his opponent agreed to settle their differences in a fight to the death. What makes this story particularly remarkable is what happened next. The two men, with only one shovel between them, took turns politely digging what would become one of their graves. The ensuing combat was described by witnesses as furious and bloody, with both men wielding Bowie knives in the freshly dug pit. Allison emerged victorious but paid a heavy price. He suffered a serious thigh injury that would leave him with a permanent limp and force him to adapt his riding style with one short stirrup. This physical reminder of the fight would stay with him for the rest of his life, giving him a distinctive appearance that became part of his legend. This wouldn't be his only notable injury. A later accident where he shot himself in the foot was captured in a surviving photograph, showing him seated with a bandaged foot and crutches beside him, a rare glimpse into the vulnerable moments of a man known for his toughness. By 1870, Allison had made his way to Cimarron, Colfax County, New Mexico, where he established a ranching operation. It was here that his legend would truly begin to take shape. His first major gunfight occurred at the Clifton House, a well-known stage stop on the Santa Fe Trail, where he killed an outlaw named Chuck Colburn. This encounter would set the pattern for many of his future confrontations: violent, decisive, and, in Allison's view, justified. But it was his role in the Colfax County War of 1875 that would truly define his character and cement his place in Western history. This complex conflict centered on the Maxwell land grant disputes and the corrupt Santa Fe Ring, a powerful group of politicians and businessmen who controlled much of New Mexico's political and economic life. Despite being a rancher himself, Allison sided with the homesteaders, driven by what appears to have been a genuine sense of fair play and justice. This decision would put him at odds with some of the most powerful men in the territory. The conflict reached a boiling point with the murder of Reverend E.J. Tolby, who had courageously exposed the ring's corruption in national news. When Tolby was found dead, presumably assassinated on the ring's orders, Allison took matters into his own hands. He led a lynch mob that tracked down the alleged murderer and hanged him on a telegraph pole. One of the most dramatic episodes from this period occurred in a local saloon, where Allison confronted Pancho Griego, a known member of the Santa Fe Ring. The encounter ended with Griego's death, adding another chapter to Allison's growing reputation as a man not to be crossed. But perhaps most revealing of his complex character was the newspaper incident, which showcased both his volatile nature and his peculiar sense of honor. In a drunken rage, Allison destroyed a press and blew up a newspaper office, going so far as to throw the press into the river. However, the next morning, upon finding Mrs. Ada Morley, who was pregnant at the time, crying at her destroyed office, Allison's response revealed the complexities of his character. After delivering what witnesses described as a severe verbal reprimand, he declared firmly, "I don't fight women," and handed over money to replace the press. His violent encounters continued to accumulate throughout his life. In Colorado, he killed a deputy sheriff but managed to avoid a murder conviction, demonstrating either his luck or his skill at navigating the legal system of the time. In Dodge City, he engaged in a shooting spree that forced even the legendary Bat Masterson and his fellow officers to seek cover. Yet despite these outbursts of violence, Allison maintained what he considered a personal code of honor. He was known to never initiate fights, though he never avoided them either. This principle seemed to guide his actions throughout his life, even if his interpretation of what constituted a justified fight might have differed from others. Later in life, Allison surprised many by settling down, marrying what contemporary accounts described as a respectable woman, and returning to ranching in Texas. However, his eccentric behavior continued to manifest in various ways. In one particularly memorable incident, he rode horseback through town completely naked, shocking the local populace. In another instance, after a dentist pulled the wrong tooth, Allison forced the unfortunate practitioner into the chair and pulled one of his teeth in retaliation. The end of Clay Allison's story carries a certain irony that wouldn't have been lost on the man himself. This notorious gunfighter, who had survived countless violent encounters and seemed to court death at every turn, met his end in a mundane wagon accident. While returning from drinking, his wagon hit a chuck hole, throwing him from his seat. The rear wheel ran over his neck, killing him instantly. He was buried beside the Pecos River, and his tombstone bore what many considered a handsome tribute on the frontier. He never killed a man who didn't need killing. Clay Allison's legacy presents a complex portrait of frontier justice. He was a man of stark contradictions. capable of extreme violence yet guided by a strong personal code, unpredictable in his actions but unwavering in his sense of justice. His story differs from many Wild West tales precisely because he lived long enough to see the frontier begin to fade, dying not in a gunfight but in an ordinary accident. Perhaps it's this very ordinary death that has caused his story to be less celebrated than those of his contemporaries. Yet, in many ways, Allison's life better represents the true complexity of the American frontier. He wasn't simply a hero or a villain, but a man shaped by his time and place, operating within his own understanding of right and wrong in a world where the line between justice and lawlessness was often remarkably thin. In the end, Clay Allison's story reminds us that the Wild West wasn't simply a place of black and white morality, but a complex landscape where justice often came at the end of a gun, and where even the most violent men could operate by their own strict code of honor. His legacy lives on not in the romantic myths of the Old West, but in the more nuanced reality of a frontier society struggling to define itself between civilization and savagery. From his tumultuous birth in Tennessee to his final resting place beside the Pecos River, Clay Allison's life story encompasses all the contradictions and complexities of the American frontier. He was a man who lived by the gun but died by accident, who destroyed property in anger but made restitution in shame, who killed men he deemed deserving but maintained his own rigid moral code. In many ways, he represents the true face of the Old West, not the simplified version of dime novels and early films, but the complex, often contradictory reality of a world in transition. I hope you enjoyed this Southwest adventure. Check out my large catalog of Southwest videos and playlists on history, lost gold legends, and adult bedtime stories. Happy trails! Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.